Around the year, I think 2000 or 2001, you started with Steve Ramirez, the poetry series, Two Idiots Peddling Poetry at the Ugly Mug Cafe in Orange County. So you have been doing this weekly reading for 14...
almost 15 years,
Yeah.
15 years in August.
Where do you get the energy to do this?
I think key thing is that there's two of us. That like neither of us have been like ready to quit at the same time ever. Like I'm sure both of us have had times where like, I'm done. But the other one's going. So and then we get just new people coming in, new blood that keeps it vibrant, just and kind of always a feeling like there are people who need it. That if we were ever to stop, which I mean someday we'll die if nothing else. But it just seems like there are people who would be left missing something they need.
Okay.
So it's do it because and honestly we end up usually becoming friends with a decent number of the regulars. So there's a personal connection that keeps it going. And I really like our readers. I think they're very talented, and so it's enjoyable to hear and to watch grow.
Since you are in direct contact with so many poets and through all these years, do you have a sense of the styles or the movements that you see in all these people, all these poets reading in the Ugly Mug?
I know we have a tendency to be more driven by stuff that works on the page, while also really liking things that work out loud and in performance. I feel like we're a pretty good balance between like a pure page and a pure performance style, and we're really open and welcoming to really anything, but I kind of feel like what ends up the people that come and read often fall in a nice in-between of, but a lot of free verse kind of thing. We don't generally have a lot of people doing a lot of form type stuff, need a little here and there. We're currently in a very absurd era. We're kind of a little weird. We're fairly geeky.
How would you describe a geeky poem?
Science fiction, comic books, fantasy, science even, topics. They're not necessarily written in a different way. It's just the subject matter is.
And have you seen any major change from the beginning when you started in the Ugly Mug to today in the poetry production of the poets you are in contact with?
Well, one thing I think that's happened is as the reading went on and gained a reputation, and we were able to bring in a new level of featured readers.
I see.
And I feel like part of what has led to the the level of our readers and the improvements I've seen over the course of years is the examples we provide.
I see.
So, when you can bring in some really amazing people that, people are hearing what works, and then they'll even unconsciously try to emulate that, and I think it just sort of elevates everything. And I felt like we there's a almost unspoken expectation at the Ugly Mug. Like, people figure out if they're going to read there, they need to either, improve as they can. We don't have some sort of rule like, if you aren't this good, go away. But we want everybody. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you're okay or if you're amazing, we want everyone to get better.
I see.
And there's sort of an understanding of work. Growth, exactly. Yeah. Grow, or eventually people move on to something else.
In 2011, you published an anthology of poets from the Two Idiots Peddling, and it was the 10th anniversary anthology. Yes. How many poets? Around over 150 poets?
Something like that.
Something
it's like 154 4? No, that might be. It's around that. It's around that.
Was it
Give or take.
very difficult to put together this project, this book?
There was a lot of like wrangling people, because basically the idea it was meant to be people who had been regulars or had featured for us, and so there was a lot of contacting people directly saying, "Hey, we're doing this. Would you send us something?" But other than that, most people seemed happy to send something. I don't, there were wasn't a lot of people that didn't get back to us. I don't think anybody outright said no.
And you coordinated this with Steve, yes? The two of you?
With Steve. Yeah,
wow.
So we did that, and so we picked the poems, which was really a lot of fun because we like the people we featured, so it was a lot of people whose work we really like, and we got to go through it, and often it would be like, these are all good, and we just have to choose.
Okay. Would you mind reading the poem that you have in this anthology?
Sure. Starts with an epigraph. Somewhere, someone is traveling furiously toward you. John Ashbery. Run. Do not let him catch you. The green in his eyes is cloudy and unreadable. You've read about his kind in the paper, the haunted look, the dark secret that dares him to break you. He knows the line to cross, how to take you back to the summer when you were 17, when all you could dream of was escape. The loneliness was the open sea, and you knew it would never let go. Its dark water was as endless and black as an oil spill, and no one could see the waves you made. He's coming for you, so run fast. If you're daring, run towards him. Meet him halfway. His eyes might regain the sparkle they had years ago. You've seen the same haunted look in the mirror, and you realize he's still lost at sea. Years of isolation have left him battered, anger the only thing keeping him warm. You can see that he's afraid to smile, as though the upturned corner of his mouth were a blade that's cut him too many times. If you're daring, heal him. Share the dream of escape as a dream fulfilled. Take him in your arms and hold him until the frightened child inside is calmed. Hold him until he becomes the man you both need him to be. Make your choice, but whatever you do, run.
When did you start writing poetry?
High school.
High school?
Yeah, so probably sophomore year. Did a little more seriously the junior year. I had a writing class, so there was a whole writing thing. What actually really made it a thing was one of my teachers from high school, who had a bit of a mentor role. He did several of the activities, extracurricular things I did and whatever, and he was one of the English teachers. He was going to this reading, and he took me.
Okay.
And that's kind of
How old were you then?
18 or 19.
Okay.
It was I was after I'd graduated, but it wasn't too long after.
Okay. So from that time when you went to this reading with your teacher that is in high school, let's move to 2007 when you published Kindness from a Dark God. What happened in all this time? What was how you describe your training or your experience as a poet, more serious poet?
Mostly it was related to various readings and such. I don't just go to my own. I go to other things, and I've been to several national level things. I had been to the Austin International Poetry Festival. I had been as a spectator or supporter to several national poetry slams. And I did workshops here and there. I do try to read. Just find people I like and read, and in particular I've tried to identify people that I felt could have an influence that I wanted to have like Cecilia Wallach, for example, I find the way she writes and the way she reads what she writes to be very engaging, and something that I don't necessarily think I do what she does at all.
Yeah.
But it was still a thing to want to try to emulate, and things like
Anybody else?
Carl Phillips. I can't do what he does. He does things that are really complicated, and like you have to read them 3 times to really get it, but the language is amazing. But I really like his work. Ellen Bass, I love how she there's a I don't know if this is an accessibility to what she writes that's amazing. That's a goal, is to write it, to have my writing be something that is clear and anybody could pick it up and read it essentially the way I would read it.
What's the role of pop culture in Kindness from a Dark God?
I would say like any pop culture in there is like it's meant to be a gateway to something more serious than which is just kind of me. Pop culture is my gateway to 2 things.
I would like you to talk about 2 poems in this book. One is called Popsicle Lobotomies, is that right?
Yes.
And the other one is The Weapons Dealer is In, or something like that. These two poems. And both of them have like a dialogue shape, or I think it's called Poetry Poker.
Yeah.
Could you talk about these 2 poems, and then I would like you to read a section from one of
Sure.
them.
So, however long ago this was, Steve Ramirez, who runs the Ugly Mug with me, he came up with this idea of doing a back and forth poem that's like playing a poker hand, and try to one up the image with something else. And the responding was usually kind of like trying to tear down what came before. So it's like, okay, you said that, well, here's why that's stupid, and here's something better, and it just becomes this whole thing. And then at the end, it's like you're laying your hand out and kind of going through and wrapping it up. And
so in this case, do you write both sections?
No.
It's
actually a back and forth with somebody else. So the ones in the book, one of them was with Steve,
yes,
if I remember correctly, and then the other one is with my friend Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
And so and they're generally done. You do it like through email. It's kind of the easiest way to do it is just one of you starts and sends the thing, and then the one writes back, and then you just go, and then eventually you both kind of feel like you're done, or you get a sense of, okay, we've been doing the back and forth long enough. It's time to wrap it up.
The point is finished.
Yeah. This is Popsicle Lobotomies, and so I'll just say the name of the person for each section. Okay, so Ben. I open with a badger-like pocket watch lost in a snowbank. Aaron. I see your ferocious timepiece of hypothermia and raise a pair of ratty size 5 sneakers hanging from a telephone wire. Ben. I'll see your tiny, tiny suicidal shoes and raise an army of one-note ideas trying to decide whether to freeze or burn. Aaron. I see your indecisive squadron of monotone notions and raise a mad scientist conducting popsicle lobotomies. And then, so it kind of goes like that, and then, so at the end, so like, where it's sort of a wrap-up, like, so within the poem, there was a reference to the Muppets and the Three Stooges and such. So this section here, this is Aaron, again. I see your feudalistic attempt at sadism and call. My high tops are hanging in midair. The kids are getting brain freezes at 7-Eleven. Kermit and Miss Piggy are getting freaky on the dance floor. Mo slapped Curly and kissed Larry. The sun has set over Morocco. The girl has chosen Lady Liberty. The sapphire queen of children's prayers has finished her speech. And here I sit, with a handful of pollen to lay siege to your daydream allergies. Breathe deep. With every sneeze, take it in. Grab a straw. I'll cut the lines. Hope and wonder need more junkies. And then, so it ends with me. Looking back on an Arctic landscape of rebellion and narrow-minded defeatism, I show a solar eclipse of a better life. Children are flying like penguins who believe they can fly. Mars is in retrograde as rival ants lay down arms, and the lovers, the dreamers, and a banjo-playing frog wait, hope on their lips, silent prayers tucked behind their ears. And I think that one leaves the reader to decide who won.
Do you have like a first reader or a first group of readers when you write for the editing process?
Yeah. I mean, I have a group of close friends that all write. That they're generally the first people I'll share things with, or it might just be the ugly mug. Might just be a lot of times the first stab at editing is an auditory thing of getting up on the mic and reading it and hearing how it sounds.
You have many poems that appear as a list or as how there's instruction manual, like things to do, and there are certain, or in a certain moment. For example, there's one called Escape Plan, Steps Towards the Approximation of Fulfillment. Even one that's called Goodbye, that I think is you are giving instructions or kind of listing instructions. Is this a pattern that it happens to you? Do you use it as a mechanism to produce poems?
When I was writing most of what's in here, numbered poems were really, really big in these circles of Orange County.
So it's like a trend.
So it was sort of a thing that I found myself, I think, trying to emulate in a way. There's at least one poem in here that started as a numbered poem, and then I realized as I would read it that it didn't need to be. It actually worked better just running through.
How do you see yourself writing now? What are you exploring now?
Well, I write almost entirely these days off of exercises. Particularly, Steve comes up with a lot of writing exercises for a group of us. He's kind of taken to reverse engineering poems. Like, he'll find a poem and then he'll try to boil it down to what are the pieces that, so that if this poem came out of a writing prompt, what might that writing prompt have looked like?
Okay.
And for me, there's something about having a framework already, and sometimes a very weird, kind of absurd framework that helps me enter into it and get into some, actual what I'm really thinking or wanting to say.
Could you read one of your list poems? It's called Steps Towards the Approximation of Fulfillment.
Yes. Happily. Okay, so steps towards the approximation of fulfillment. Accept the inevitability of being alone. Get in shape. Learn to dance. Remove heart. Put it somewhere safe. It will not survive the process. Find hiding places for pride, optimism, respect. They will only get in the way. Do not store them with your heart. Committing too much of yourself to one place defeats the purpose of the exercise. Become a slut, but not just any slut. You must be Olympic class. Constant sexual contact is essential to success. Ignore any sense of emptiness. Build walls. Stop feeling. Become dead inside if necessary. Watch the parade of lovers pass before you. Enjoy.
Where will you place yourself between more traditional page poet or text poet and a performance poet?
I would, let's see, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is page, 10 is performance. I'd say probably a 4. It's really, the performance is really important to me. I actually have a theater background.
Okay.
So I can't totally separate out, I'll hear poets who are really good read really badly, and all I hear is the really badly read. It doesn't matter to me if the writing is amazing, if the performance is terrible. But that doesn't mean I need, flashy or even particularly energetic. I just need clearly read with intention and an understanding of that this is communication and how a person would absorb that communication in a way that's effective. So the performance angle, I think, gets to the kind of the rhythm meter of it. I don't do anything that's formal in that, but there's a natural flow to how things sound. I actually will often reading poems by just reading a book of poetry, I'll read it out loud. Like how it, sounds auditorially is, often key to my enjoying it. But I really do, for me, the writing is the key. Like there's very little of what I do that needs the performance.
I see. You have this element or this component in your poems, which is I think the absurd. There's a certain absurdity that is very appealing and intriguing. Do you have like a cultural reference to the, I don't know, to the French surrealist or to other reference that fits this absurd in your?
Not particularly. It's more a comedy thing.
A comedy thing. Okay.
It's probably just.
So connected to humor.
Yeah, and honestly, like the best cultural thing I can think of to tie it to is like Animaniacs. If you ever saw that? It was a Warner Brothers cartoon that was just full of just crazy, ridiculous, absurd things.
The chicken poem connected to the absurd.
Okay, this is the chicken poem, Balboa Park, February 12th. The chicken gives me relevance. Like great works of art, I am more important with tiny poultry on my canvas. You wanted to free Hieronymus Bosch. I wondered at the value of liberation for a dead painter. You found the Gabrielle Munter and had a full day. I saw her name and thought of you. I decided Japanese gardens require hours for full effect. You sat near the aggressive fountain and found serenity. You with the syntax and the girlfriend and the place you belong. Me with the 5 days of memory and the life I'm still reinventing. You with the laughter and the knowing whereof you speak. Me with the sanctity of leap years and waiting for the next one. You will take the chicken home with you. The tiny turtle will be my talisman now. I don't know what turtles give, but I'll let you know.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.